Nobody better to talk about than the legend that is Tom Hunt. How are you, Tommy?
I'm very good.
We've never met. He's had a haircut. Usually he's on the sofa. You're looking very smart, son.
Yeah, new Tom. Yeah.
Thank you. A new Tom.
New era, yeah.
A new era. Oh, it's a new dawn, a new beginning. 0344 409 1000. Jeremy, very quickly, you should answer this. Your voice note, who spoke of illegal migrants throwing passports into the sea, made me wonder why Greenpeace and co aren't up in arms over the seas being polluted. That's Joe in Worcestershire. Let's start, if we can, with the main topic of the day. Last week, police, Starmer was reported as saying, hate crime and words are very, very wrong. We shouldn't be doing that. Why am I doing this accent? I have no idea. Today, he tells the police you should be fighting crime that matters most to their communities rather than spending public money on investigating involved hurt feelings. He says that police forces will be held to account. Now, much as I support that, and much as I think fair play, that's a full 360, isn't it, in about 7 days?
It's a total 360. He said something entirely different a week ago.
Yeah.
And I must say that I've been the victim of this sort of approach. So I made some comments in a local newspaper about 4 years ago about crime in the town centre, and a local Labour activist recorded me for a non-crime hate incident. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, it is utterly ridiculous. You know, we want police to be focused on keeping us safe. We want them to be in the street tackling actual criminals. And, you know, this is a tactic from certain people to try and drag the kind of long arm of the state into legitimate free debate. It's chilling, it's stifling for free speech, and we should stand up to it.
Well, the thing is, I don't understand. You were an MP for... How long were you an MP for?
4.5 years.
I mean, probably the youngest. You were the baby of the house. You're that young, right? I'm an old man. I don't understand that when I was brought up, right, we were scared of the police. The police were there to make sure the law wasn't broken. You didn't want the stiff arm of the law. That was it. We are now saying that we live in a world, and certainly in a country, and I said this at 4 o'clock, and I'd love your response to this, whereby you can put incredibly ill-advised and ill-judged comments, that lady, about the Muslim community online, disgusting. I would have thought the correct way to deal with her would be to make her, for 6 months, do community service within the Muslim community to learn from that community why she was so wrong about what she said, rather than throwing her in jail. But even if you want to throw her in jail, we're now at a point where we're having to explain, me to my American friends over the weekend, that she's in jail and paedophiles like Hugh Edwards are walking the bleeding streets. Tom, it doesn't, forget me ranting, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever to anybody.
No, it doesn't. And, you know, I fought actually under the last government that would stop these non-crime hate incidents. But they're still happening, and it's come back with a vengeance. Quite why Alison Pearson, who was a journalist who put a tweet out there, which...
Do we know what the tweet was?
Well, I think we have a sense to what it was, and I think she got something wrong with an image to do, but it was an innocent mistake. It wasn't really a big deal. She deleted it. The idea that the police, under resources under pressure, should be spending time, taking time out of their duties. I mean, this is absurd.
Share your experience then. You told me then, just then, non-crime hate...
So essentially, so there was an issue in our town centre of crime and antisocial behaviour.
In Ipswich.
In Ipswich. And I did a column, and I said if it is the case that certain crimes are disproportionately committed by members from certain communities, we should be open and honest about that.
Yeah, why not?
I thought it's a pretty uncontroversial thing to say.
Racist.
And a local Labour activist recorded me for a non-crime hate incident. Suffolk constabulary were forced to log it. They didn't investigate it. But
is this whilst you were an MP?
Whilst I'm an MP, but it's still against my name, Matt. And in an enhanced DRB check, it can come up. And what is ridiculous is it doesn't even have to be the alleged victim who makes the complaint.
It can be anybody.
It could be anyone.
So you're telling me that you dared to say what I've said. So I'm expecting a knock on the door, because, I mean, I've been quite vociferous about this next point. You know, as much as I was vociferous against that man who decided to call herself Isla Bryson when he'd raped 2 women, wore a pair of trousers that showed everything he'd got down below and put a blonde wig on and ended up in a prison in Scotland. Isla Bryson, no, you lie, you're a man and a rapist. I'm also quite happy to say that paedophiles should be in jail, and that people... I'm not condoning what some people say, but we've got to a point now where people are too scared. I mean, I've said, you know, Rotherham? Those are British Pakistani men. This is factual, by the way, for the people who are going to have a go at me. The police will tell you themselves, and have done, that the reason they were reticent to go forward in prosecution, this why it took 8 years, was for fear of reprisals from different communities. Could I just point out than 8-year-old kids were sexually abused. I couldn't care the colour of your skin or your religion. If you break the bloody law, surely, that's what I'm trying to say, you should understand the consequences.
But the culture around things like non-crime hate incidents, that's why this is so dangerous and so serious, because it creates a climate where people are scared to speak out and things like that. And Alison Pearson is a formidable journalist with a big following, a big platform. I was a sitting MP, so we were able to sort of challenge this sort of stuff. But the danger is that people who don't feel able to challenge it don't, and therefore they alter their behaviour. They don't say what they know to be true. It stifles our debate, and we live in this kind of Orwellian society which sends shivers down my spine.
I said to you after the election that your party had done such a bad job that I found it quite tragic that the British people had stopped listening to them, because all these sorts of things, and even I like that, I didn't realise how nanny-esque, state-esque it would be in such a short space of time. And it is. It's frightening. I'm
surprised that they've been so bad so quickly.
Are you?
I am surprised. And there isn't really a lot we can do for the next 4 years because they're in power, and I don't have confidence that much will happen.
I don't think he'll last 4 years.
But all we can do is, as a party, is sort of trying to atone for our sins and make sure.
Do you think that's possible? Do you think the Tories can ever atone for their sins in the eyes of the great British public?
I think with Kemi Badenoch we have the best possible chance of that. I've got a lot of confidence in her.
Have you?
Yeah.
Been impressed so far?
I have been, yeah, and I think it's interesting how uncomfortable Keir Starmer looks with a dispatch box when he takes her on.
Well, for somebody who talks about women and, quite rightly, minority groups, it must be very difficult when he stood there as a white middle-class man with a knighthood who's been caught with his paid-for trousers, you know, do you know what I mean? Talking to a girl who's pulled herself up from nothing, come over from a different country and prove that this place is the place that one can make a success of one's life. So, yeah, that's very, very interesting. There's so much. I mean, the other story that came out today, and I'm interested in this, Nigel Farage has confirmed that Reform UK is mounting a private prosecution against the 2 men involved in that brawl with police at Manchester Airport. Now, you know this story, just for people who don't. There was some terrible footage of a policeman kicking this I would say, not criminal, but a person they were trying to arrest in the head. It went viral. It was appalling. He was rightly suspended and is under investigation. But 5 months later, nothing from the CPS, nothing from the independent watchdog, nothing at all about these 2 men. They're Muslim, right? That's fine. But it begs the whole question again, right? Is this being slowed down for any reason? I'm not sure about reform response. Is that doing the right thing by the people? Is it a publicity stunt? I don't know. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, I've seen the full video clip, and whether the men in question are British Muslim or whatever British Christian, I don't think it's that relevant, actually.
No, but it's certainly raised when you talk about Rotherham and two-tier policing.
I saw a video with 2, I think it was 2 men, committing violent physical abuse on a female police officer.
You know that have been shot in America, don't you?
Who I think they broke the nose.
They broke the nose of her, yeah.
And you know, this is the most outrageous behaviour, and clearly it needs to be prioritised when it comes to investigation. And actually, the public are right to be concerned that this appears not to have been the case. So I've got absolutely no idea what's happened there. All I know is I've seen a video with 2 men beating up a female police officer.
But this is the reason that I said, and I'm with you. I've said repeatedly on this show, it shouldn't matter where you come from or the colour of your skin as to the law. Well, if the law is the law, but when you look at this in a wider context and you see that the officer's already under investigation, suspended, and nothing has happened, and you think about the way Starmer is going, you think to yourself, well, is this two-tier?
Well, what annoys me is the police. The law of this land should be enforced without fear or favour.
Absolutely.
That is what should happen. Absolutely. This whole thing about community relations, and because of community relations we're going to treat different people differently, totally wrong.
How does law work if you've got to get out of jail
The only thing that is relevant is 2 men are on video committing vile physical abuse on a female police officer. Absolutely. Those are the facts, and that's what should guide what happens next.
Keir Starmer today has just dropped another bombshell, this time in the Channel. I mean, this is beyond me. I'd love your take on this. He's backing plans for Britain, this is along Maloney in Italy, to pay countries to help reduce the number of illegal migrants arriving here. Amongst those countries he wants to give our money to, people, is Vietnam and Iraq. Now, call me stupid, but wouldn't the money be better spent not giving the French 500 million quid because they don't do zilch, turning the boats round, creating a crack force of people that can, process this very, very quickly, Sending these people home, forget the ECHR for a moment, because in this country people are genuinely finding this harder and harder to deal with. But we don't seem to have a politician or somebody who can answer me this straight. They go, oh, you don't understand. I was saying earlier, Donald Trump said from day one there will be an elite crack force of troops that will find, abscond, arrest and deport every single person who is in illegally, and however long it takes, $1 trillion, if they come back, they'll be put in jail for 10 years with no parole. Now, people are going, he's mad. Tell you what, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
I mean, look, we need a deterrent. I mean, it's absolutely...
Make it harder to come. No, not even harder to come. We're soft here when you get here, because we look after people better than we look after our own.
Anyone who arrives here illegally should be immediately deported.
Yes.
My concern with intercepting the boats in the Channel and taking them back to France is our vessels will probably be impounded in French ports once they get there. That's my concern. But ultimately, if the French really wanted to solve it, they'd accept returns and the problem would be resolved overnight. But they're not doing that, which tells you something.
Can I ask you a question I've never asked anybody? I said this once to somebody in the office and they laughed at me. What you've just said about the French is very true, despite the fact we give them 500 million quid. Do you think it's a two fingers from them because of Brexit?
Maybe it's got something to do with that, but to be perfectly honest, I think it's more to do with Macron looking after French national interest, and it's easier for them just to allow tens of thousands of people to pass through to Britain, because that's tens of thousands of people who won't be claiming asylum in France.
OK. Jeremy, I can assure you that the great British public will never forget the parlour state the Tories let this country fall into. They're still the same bunch, so why on earth would we vote them back? That's a sign of insanity. You can answer, David, that.
I think the Conservative Party feels very different with Kemi at the helm. That would be my response.
What a great answer.
And I think
5:15. Now, one of the things that is bubbling away through Parliament, and it's one of those subjects that's so contentious that there isn't a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to talk to you about this. Angela Rayner has today come out and said that she's going to vote against the assisted dying bill, which was put into Parliament by a backbencher. And try and explain a little bit about this, because this is close to your own heart. Where do you stand on this?
I'm strongly opposed to this bill, you know, and I'm good for Angela Rayner actually for adopting this position. There's a phrase, tough cases make bad law, and I think this is one of those cases. I've got huge sympathy for individuals who are in a situation where they're in fear of suffering pain. But the issue is, whenever I look at where this has been introduced, wherever I look at where it's been introduced, every single place it's been introduced, I hear horrific stories, horrific case studies, huge numbers of vulnerable people who are feeling like a burden and who prematurely often will take their lives. We've got examples of young people with anorexia ending up being eligible for this. This is deeply concerning. And what's also deeply concerning is the fact that there was only 2 weeks between the bill being published and the vote on the 29th of November, and there's only going to be 5 hours of debate. This is not enough. No. This is of gigantic proportions. This issue. But I care. You know, I care about vulnerable people in this country. I don't want them to feel like their life's worth nothing. I want, you know, I want to, you know, and Wes Streeting has been really interested on this in terms of palliative care. You know, we've got a significant portion of people in this country who aren't getting good access to palliative care. Let's focus on that. Now, let's sort out the issues around social care.
You would want me, not actually because we're doing a show, but you would want me to give you my opinion. And when I say it's the opposite, I don't actually have a steadfast opinion. I want to give you my experience of my parents, because you'll go, I suspect people have already, oh yes, but I totally get. The worrying thing about this bill is that there is an opportunity, Tom, for it to be abused by relatives who are out to get a quick buck, and you know, we can be accused of thinking badly of people. My mother, right, you might find this terrible, had a stroke, stopped speaking, and never spoke again, and I prayed every day for 11 weeks that she would die, and she did, right? She did. My old man was as switched on as anything, and his body gave up. I saw my old man being fed whilst wearing a nappy, and I am telling you, whatever anybody says, he would have begged me on his hands and his knees for his entire life to vote for this bill if I was an MP. He would have said to me, "What I don't want this. I am." And so we have those situations that plenty of people can throw at people on your side of the fence and go. So do we argue that maybe when you're of sound mind and body at 50 or 40, whatever, you write that in your will? I don't know. But my parents, I know people whose parents have lasted 10 years like that. That's not a life. You look what happens, and I know it's what we do to animals, right? There also has to be an argument that what is not fair, but what's right for the person involved. But I get the abuse, I get it, but I think you've also got to understand there are people who don't want to be on this earth like that.
I totally get this is incredibly difficult. I totally get that. But when I look at these safeguards, they're not really safeguards. And also, I'll reiterate, that every place where this has been introduced, they've said, oh, this is going to be the safest bill ever. It never ends up like that.
How do we make it safe?
Well, it's very hard. And so, for example, this bill says that before the decision's taken, you have to see two different doctors and they have to sign it off. And they have to judge whether you're under pressure or duress. Doing that's actually really hard. Some of that pressure is very subtle. And also, there's nothing to stop doctor shopping. So, for example, if one of the doctors thinks, well, actually, I'm not sure about this, there's nothing to stop you just going to another doctor until you finally get the sign-off.
Is it possible, this bill, and I don't know enough about the specifics of the bill, but is it not possible for the bill to be very much more detailed in that if you talk about palliative care or end of life or your value of life or whatever, but the problem with it is who makes that bleeding decision. So my argument is, can't you make that decision at the age of 40 and say, if I'm ever, hear me out, my old man used to say it to me every day. He used to say to me, if I get to a point and I'm in a nappy, you better put a pillow over my head. I'm just telling you the truth. I'll probably be arrested now for a hate crime. That's what he used to say to me. I would never have done that, but you try seeing your 87-year-old dad, the sharpest tool in the box with a nappy on. That's pointless. I'm being straight.
So one thing I think is...
And anyway, I do want this bill to go through because my mother-in-law's listening.
So one thing that we probably all agree on is this is a difficult debate, but actually we need to have it. We need to have a debate about how we treat people at the end of their lives. Yeah. But the thing is, we haven't got palliative care to where it needs to go to. You know, I used to go to the hospice, for example, in Ipswich when I was an MP. Wonderful place, wonderful people, they do great work. But well over 50% of their funding is from fundraising, which is great. I mean, the charity runs and all that, are wonderful. But, I mean, come on, you know, and so the funding into our palliative care isn't where it needs to be. Social care isn't sorted out because we haven't capped social care costs. So we've got, you know, people who are spending, you know, £2,500 a week on care costs. And, you know, so let's sort that out. Let's do everything we can to get palliative care. But look, the status quo isn't ideal. I'm not arguing it is. This bill is, I think, terrifying. But the reality is that this is never going to be anything other than difficult because death is difficult.
Listen, and I think it's really interesting. I have a friend who has cancer, and he will go to Digitas in Switzerland. That is his choice. He doesn't want to just rot. And so, you know, people like that will have a view, but I get it. Listen, let's open our eyes to the society we live in. People will go on, mum, or go, really? What? You know, awful.
I don't think we've debated these broader issues enough. 5
hours is not enough. Why didn't the government make this the sort of bill that could take time and be discussed by everybody?
Historically, these are sort of conscience issues, and the view is that private members' bills are best place for them. But, you know, I don't really know what Starmer's position is on this.
Well, he might let you know one thing today and another.
It's a bit of a recurring theme, because of course, you know, because he promised to Esther Ranson that he'd you know, make time for all of this, and his record in the past has been he's very much in favour. But of course now he's saying he's not sure. So it's uncertain where he. But the thing is, this bill is wrong. There's not enough time to scrutinise it. I and many other figures from across the political spectrum, from Diane Abbott to Nigel Farage, you know, there is deep concern about this bill and what it means for the most vulnerable in our society, who we're duty bound to protect. That doesn't mean that I don't think there needs to be a massive discussion about how we improve things. Some people have mentioned royal commissions, for example, to look at all the different facts, and I think things like that are needed. This bill, I'm certain that this bill as it stands will mean that huge numbers of people, vulnerable people, will feel pressure to end their lives prematurely, and it devalues human life, in my view. And I think, look at Canada, for example, was introduced in 2016. They said, oh, it's only going to apply to an incredibly small number of people. Last year, 4.1% of all deaths were under assisted dying. You know, you have people going for treatment in hospitals, and doctors just sort of glibly saying, oh, have you thought about this? You know, it's not
right. It is a really difficult one. And listen, Tom, it is always great. I can't believe how young he looks. Honestly, he could be my son, my grandson. Thank you so much indeed for coming in. Ex-Tory MP for Ipswich, Tom Hunt, the mother